This is the second video I'm putting out today talking about the UN. And that's because, well, they're hypocrites. There's really no other way to say it. Today specifically, the UN has designated as Human Rights Day 2020. And I would generally have no issue with an organization designating a day to talk about human rights, because that sounds like something we should all agree on. The problem that I have, though, is that when that organization is the UN, it's just showing their own hypocrisy. I talked about this in a previous video, but here I want to focus on one very important issue to me, and that is abortion. And that's because for some reason, the UN believes that abortion is not only a human right, but that restricting or limiting access to abortion is akin to torture. Their words, not mine. And in case this isn't clear, let me spell it out very explicitly. Abortion is not a human right. As a matter of fact, it violates the most fundamental human right, which is the right to life. That doesn't stop the UN from pretending that abortion is in fact a human right. So much so that last year, when there were several states in America that were trying to restrict or limit access to abortion, the UN came out and said you can't do that and kind of condemned those states. Now, to show you just how perverse their views on abortion actually are, let's just look at these general comments that came out in 2019. It's titled The Right to Life, and the first paragraph is fairly promising, where they say things like this. They recognize and protect the right to life of all human beings. The right to life is the supreme right, and the right to life has crucial importance both for individuals and for society as a whole. So if you were to read that first paragraph, and again, the title of this, which is Right to Life, you might think that, oh, perhaps the UN is a pro-life organization. But nothing could be farther from the truth. They are very pro-abortion, as they highlight just a little bit later in this same document. They concede that states and countries may adopt measures designed to regulate voluntary termination of pregnancy, but those measures must not result in violation of the right to life of a pregnant woman or girl, or her other rights under the covenant. So they straight up say, sure, you can restrict abortion to an extent, but it can't really affect the right to life of the mother, meaning they completely ignore the right to life of the human that is inside the mother, because that is a human life. There is no doubt about any of that. And at this point, someone who is pro-choice would say, well, pro-lifers only care about the human life inside, they only care about the fetus, and they don't care about the mother whatsoever. But that's completely wrong. Pro-lifers are the only ones who recognize and want to protect both of the lives. I want to protect the life of the mother as well as the life of the fetus. They both have the right to life. And the mother ending the human life that is inside her is violating that human's right to life. The UN continues and they talk about restrictions that you shouldn't place on abortion. They say that they should not take measures such as criminalizing pregnancies by unmarried women, I agree with that, or apply criminal sanctions against women and girls undergoing abortion, or against medical service providers assisting them in doing so. Now it says there a criminal sanction, and I want to point out that, at least in the United States, criminal offenses can fall into several different categories. Just because you have been convicted of a crime does not mean you're going to go to jail for any real period of time. So if they're talking about locking people up, well, there are a lot of pro-lifers who would not agree with that. But it kind of seems like to me, they're saying that you can put some restrictions on this, but at the same time, if those restrictions are broken, you can't punish the woman who got the abortion or the person who performed the abortion. So really, what's the point of those restrictions at all? A criminal offense includes things like disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and shoplifting. Things that are not all that extreme, in my opinion. At the very least, they don't result in ending a human life like abortion does. We are now going to go to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN. They put out this information series on sexual and reproductive health and rights this year, where they obviously talked about abortion. They said specifically that denial of access to abortion has been identified as a form of gender-based violence against women, which can amount to torture and/or cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. So there we have it. Restricting or limiting access to abortion is akin to torture. They also say that human rights bodies have repeatedly called for the decriminalization of abortions in all circumstances. The key words there being all circumstances. Now, we already saw that the UN's position on abortion was that it shouldn't criminalize the woman getting the abortion or the abortion provider. And now we see that that is the case in all circumstances. Presumably that includes late-term abortions, third trimester abortions, whenever you want it, because it shouldn't be criminalized in any case, is what they're saying here. They continue and say that states, referring to countries, have obligations to respect, protect, and fulfill women's rights related to abortion services. Respect and protect kind of makes sense to me. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand what it's trying to say. But when it says fulfill, are they implying that countries have an obligation to ensure that women can get abortions and perhaps pay for it? Because that seems to be what they're saying here. As a matter of fact, in another general comment, this one in 2016, they said that states should aim to ensure universal access without discrimination to a full range of quality sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion. So states should ensure universal access to abortion, is what they're saying here. Now, that's not explicitly saying that states should fund abortion per se, but it's not really that far away from it. I would say it's an implicit assumption here. If states have an obligation to ensure that everyone can get an abortion and there's universal access, well, if someone can't pay for an abortion and you're obligated to provide one for them, that kind of makes it seem like the state would have to pay for it, which is something that someone like Joe Biden would certainly agree with because he wants to force US taxpayers to pay for abortions. So while this specific point from the UN is not 100% clear, I think it's clear enough that we can tell the UN wants you to pay for abortions. And not for yourself, but for some random person you've never met and you never will meet. So just to do a brief recap here, the UN believes very strongly in the right to life, but only the right to life of people who have already been born. Apparently, if you're a human life but you're inside the womb, your right to life doesn't really matter. Not only that, but restricting access to abortion is torture, so we shouldn't do it. And we shouldn't criminalize abortion in any case. There should be virtually no punishment for the woman or for the abortion provider, even if I guess they're breaking the law. And just to make sure everyone can get an abortion, let's pay for them with tax dollars, because nothing seems wrong or inherently immoral about that. This is yet another reason why I believe the UN is a joke and a farce, and they are hypocrites. They claim to care about human rights, so much so they have a Human Rights Day, which is today, but then they talk about abortion as somehow being a human right. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you want to see more about why the UN is a joke, check out my previous video put out today talking about how China is imprisoning Uyghur Muslims and the UN is kind of letting that happen. Not only that, but they're allowing China on the Human Rights Council to lecture other countries about how they're violating human rights. I hope this information has been beneficial to you. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, share, like, and leave a comment. And I'll see you next time.